slavery work that was called the earned slave. So most of them, they were women that used it to cook and sell food on the streets, so they could keep money from them, and also buy their own freedom and freedom other women. So, so Mercedes Batista was the first black ballerina from the municipal theater, actually. So she came to study ballet in around the 60s in Rio de Janeiro. She never became the principal character, but she became the first black ballerina in the classic dance. Was young, and actually Mercedes Batista, most of the blocos, they lived from here, and one of the famous ones is Escravos da Mauá, slavery of Mauá. And actually after the pandemic here, this area became a really tourist area as well. So most of the restaurants, now it's closed, but you can, if you come later, you can see that most of the restaurants, they put at the tables here, and you can, the salt rock, Pedra do Sal. So Pedra do Sal, actually they have this name because in the past, most of the enslaved Africans, they carried the salt from the port until the top of Morro da Conceição. Yeah. So actually the stairs that you are seeing right now, it was made by them as well. But actually here Pedra do Sal became more important in a way that in the past, as I told you, most of the Afro-Brazilians that started to live here, these baianos especially that started to come from Bahia, they were from the Candomblé religion, and they used to do a lot of Candomblé rituals in this stone, that is the Shango stone. And so here actually was considered a sacred place for most of them. But here also it's important for the samba, because most of the first samba composers, they started to play here. Let's see. So can you see here in the picture, João da Baiana and Donga, they were the first samba composers from 1906 with the song By the Telephone. And they used to live actually around Morro da Conceição. They were sons of that tias, aunties, that also they were Candomblé preachers, and they also actually they create a place that they could play samba inside the houses, because actually, as I told you, samba is a Bantu word, and the definition of samba is daughters of Yaos, and they said that in the past, the same rhythm that they used to play during the batuques, after this they started to put some lyrics. So that's why the samba was born around the terreiros de Candomblé. But Brazil, actually we have different types of sambas, and they have different types of influences also, depends on which state you are.
Yeah.
And in Bahia, specifically in the region of Recôncavo Baiano, the same region that the most of these Baianos came from to live here in Morro da Conceição. The type of samba that they have is samba de roda. It's like a circle samba, and it's completely different from the samba that we have in Rio. But in Rio, actually in the past, the most important sambas was samba de raiz, samba de enredo. That is the type of samba that we have from the samba schools. But we have a lot of influences of the Baianos as well in our samba. Specifically around the Congo Square, that is at the same time of the history, Louis Armstrong also was prohibited to play jazz in the same place. And also the drums was prohibited in the US as well. So the drums is a way that we can be connected to our ancestors. So that's why most of the Afro-Brazilian songs and rhythms, they have the drums in their rhythms. music as well.
And here, if you go at night on Mondays or Fridays, there's a huge samba party, great for young people. So check it out when you're in Rio.
Franco was a politician that was assassinated in 2018 in Rio. So she was a human rights activist and LGBT community and black community as well. And until today, we don't know who killed her. But Marielle Franco became one of the biggest voice around Rio in the last years around the culture. That was one of the first samba composers. Hilário Jovino was a samba composer, also was a painter, and was the person that created this definition of Little Africa. So he identified all the African presence in all these neighbors around here. So actually that came from Bahia, and actually she was a healer, she was a cooker, she was a candomblé priestess, mãe de santo, and she was a person that was able to host the samba in her house.
So this mural really describes a lot of the history here, from the samba we just heard to some of the leaders, where we are, the blocos, which is the street parties for Carnival, which makes life here, right, to Chiacia that we already talked about, to Festa Junina, which is another party in June. It's basically like festival for harvest, and you dress in like traditional clothes, to life in the street.
Those adinkras, they were symbols made by population of Accra and Ivory Coast. And in Brazil and in many places that we have slavery, this is the most common work that we can saw around the ironwork.
Oh.
And most of them, they have different types of definitions. So actually this is the representation of the Sankofa. So Sankofa is the bird that is...
Which one?
Sankofa. Pass and understanding how we can move on. So this is the representation of this symbol that is in all, like many countries, probably in the US. This hill is the name of one Catholic saint, Nossa Senhora da Conceição. Yeah, so this is one of the examples of the Sankofa that I show you. The Adinkra symbol, that is the representation of Sankofa, the Conceição. So in Brazil, especially during the slavery period, actually, most of the enslaved Africans, they had to become Catholic. They were obligated to learn Catholicism, and they weren't able to have their own beliefs. So that's why in Brazil we have the syncretism. That is, so we have two big Brazilian religions, that is Candomblé and Umbanda. So Candomblé actually came from Nigeria. So the Orishas came from Nigeria, and the first Candomblé house was developed in Salvador, Bahia. And Umbanda has different types of spiritual influences related to the gypsies, slavers, indigenous as well. And both of them, they are Brazilians, but in the past, most of enslaved Africans, they had to put the Catholic saints in the front, knowing that they were praying for the Orishas. So actually, Nossa Senhora da Conceição is related to Oxum. So right. Oxum is the Orisha of the love, the prosperity. And in different states in Brazil, actually, also we have different types of Catholic saints that are related to different types of Orishas. Once a year.
So Thais was just talking about this mixture of the Catholic religion that was kind of imposed, but yet resisting that by putting your own saint from your religion, right, in the back. So she was talking about these pairings, that there's two saints really that they were worshipping. And this candomblé, these religions really still live on. We were just talking about the carnival parade that happens every year. That's a very touristy thing, and yet, you know, there is this candomblé that's happening where the whole avenida, the street where they're parading, is being washed spiritually to welcome everything. So that's kind of a cool thing.
Actually, he born in Pernambuco, he moved to Bahia, and then he came to live here in this hill. So he was a samba composer, he was a dark worker. He created another way that people were making ranchos carnavalescos. 5, and the way that we understand as bloco carnavalesco started here. And actually one of the first samba schools.
So blocos are the street parties for Carnival, and the guy that you just saw was the one who actually came up with the rhymes that you do for Carnival, and also the couple that dances up front holding the flag. So part of the history of Carnival.
Yeah, Favela da Providência. So actually Favela da Providência was developed in the end of the 19th century actually. Because most of the people, so this street was the slavery market district, and here was the safeguarding building.
So this was the slave-free market street, and this is a house for one of the blocos, one of the street parties where they rehearse.
Almost 1 million of them, they disembarked around the
So we're here at the Valongo Wharf. So when Rio de Janeiro became the capital of the Portuguese Empire, the slave trade was also moved from Bahia to here, and this was constructed. So this actually used to be beach on this other side here, and this was constructed as kind of the port where the slaves arrived.
So when we talk about resistance, what does it mean, resistance? It means that for many centuries, most of the population that was oppressed to the society, I'm talking about the slavery period and how people are made their own life after this, with all the racism around the structures, without any support of the government. Black population made the life, made the culture alive, and they are still keeping all the history and the culture alive to Brazil. So it's becoming more recognizing and being seen by Brazilians as well. This is the t-shirt that I sell, that is the brand.
So she has a YouTube channel on Black Women Travelers, if anybody wants to check it out. So while we're walking to our last stop, just a little bit of a review of how culture really is important to be preserved, and you guys saw that what is authentic about the destination needs to be preserved so that we can have a destination that is meaningful for visitors and that showcases things that are actually important to the destination. You saw that when we talk about sightseeing, we don't always have to talk about the main sites and hopping on the bus, off the bus. It could be meaningful tours like this one. So here we are finishing at the cruise port. You can see MSC is in town. Cruise ship season here is from April to October. And you can see that, of course, those tourists have a totally different experience of town, only being here for 1 day and selectively only seeing a couple of things. I've enjoyed this tour. I'm going to say ciao to Thais, and we'll see you guys later.
Was made by one Brazilian artist, Cobra, and actually it was during the Olympic game period. So the name of this mural is Ethnics, and he's representing all indigenous people from all the continents, so different types of continents. Here we have African, so these are the Herero tribe that are in different parts of Angola and Congo, for example. We have like the Asian people. So this is the representation of indigenous people in Brazil and in the whole American continent. So from that one is So this is the representation of indigenous from Europe, especially in Russia. And the other one is the Aborigines from Australia. So actually Cobra, he has also artwork in Miami, in the Wynwood area. You can just go there and check it out, his work, because he's expanding invisible people, indigenous, bringing other types of population that was invisible for the history, and he's putting in this work, his work as well.